Welcome to the hit podcast, H.I.T, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. We want to keep to our commitment of keeping our conversations bite-sized, digestible from a size length. We don't want to go too long. And darn it, we ran a little bit long. So this is the continuation. If you missed any of the conversation, go back, catch the former parts. This week's episode is brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions. And without any further ado, we're going to pick right up where we left off last week.
Helping them craft those communications and those bullet points so they can then speak to them again and again and again.
Yeah, I think that again and again is probably the bane of a lot of people's existence, but it is unavoidable. It's sort of, hey, guys, I want to tell you these things that Kelsey's touching upon and reiterate them enough to where, as we said, if we get down the pike on how this change went, we started here, we stuck the landing on this. This wasn't the problem. We definitely let people know what, when, why, etc. So if we feel like we've communicated that really well and can definitely look ourselves in the eye, look that list down and say we've nailed that, then you're saying in order to really kind of shift hearts and minds or have any version of success with this, we get to a place of desire and we need to touch upon that.
One of my favorite examples was actually at the H.I.T conference. So at the conference, I hate it when somebody just talks at me because I'm like, but I want to go try it, right? And so I never want to just talk at people. So I think we had 90 minutes and we probably spent an hour of it actually practicing and applying. And so as I was working from table to table and we were each working through our individual activities in our packets, one of the people at the conference, her thing that she was having a hard time adopting, her changes she was struggling with is she wanted to really adopt some new like meditation practices in her morning routine and in her life. And so then I'm asking her, I said, what do you think the barrier is? And she's like, I think that I just need to learn more about more types of meditation practices. I just need more knowledge. I need more whatever. And so I just sat with her for a minute and I started asking her some questions. And I said, well, when do you do your meditation? And what are you wanting meditation to look like someday? And when, and I started asking, and then I asked her, she's kind of kept talking about this thing about her morning routine. And she's having a really hard time finding time. And I said, have you sat down and reassessed your morning routine? And she's like, no. I said, do you want to wake up earlier to do this? Because she's like, I just got to wake up early. I said, do you want to wake up earlier or is waking up early like hard and you need to adjust things? And it came down to she had a desire opportunity. It had nothing to do with knowledge. She actually was pretty knowledgeable or she was going to go learn more. But it was, man, I don't want to wake up earlier, which I'm with her, right?
Yeah.
And we just sat and got to have this great conversation about, but do you have to? Like, let's work on that resistance. Just because you're resistant to waking up earlier, maybe you don't need to. Maybe we can work through this and increase your desire by finding creative solutions together. And so that desire piece really means we have to come to the table without our biases, without our assumptions. We can't be seeing people negatively, and we got to really listen well. And when we do change here, as we're working through those awareness questions, we come up with change communication plans. So I work for Northrop Grumman Federal Credit Union right now. And we work with our stakeholders. We map like, okay, here's our content, but then we're going to send an email this day. We're going to talk in this meeting. Then we're going to share it in this meeting. It's going to get built into here. And we map out these dates. And we, along the way, also try to plan for like, is there going to be a great moment to celebrate or to tell a story or to help people with some of these desire moments potentially, right? And so sometimes we just want to we're Americans. We like to go at a quick clip. We like to just dig in and make it happen. And then we're beat and we're like, another thing. And sometimes it's just, let's slow down and really figure out why this is hard. Let's be okay with that. And then that's a much better way to start assessing and tackling desire.
Yeah, I was just making this joke the other day with someone where if you've got something that needs to be in the oven for 20 minutes at 200 degrees, you can't just do it 400 degrees, 10 minutes, right? You can't just turn it up, rush it, get done with it. It's like, it's all on balance. It's the same thing. You're like, no, each one of these things needs to breathe and they do need their moment. And we can't rush straight to, do you guys understand the knowledge part of this change? If, as you said, what we're looking for is some version of however we define success in this change. And your example of the meditation is well taken because like you said, kind of the prescription can be similar regardless of what the change is. And then maybe to bring it back on a corporate side, as you mentioned, maybe we're rolling out a new payroll system, or maybe we are, like shifting our typical client base. So maybe, I don't know, we're a large roofing company that's getting into solar or something, right? Something big is
Yeah,
happening at the company level. And I think, one coming down the pike is, there's a lot of AI stuff. There's a lot of technology. There's a
for
lot of,
sure.
SOPs, the way we did things. And one of my favorite expressions is what got you here won't get you there. So if for some reason or another, we as an organization are making this pivot, we work on the awareness and those sort of 5 points. We work on the desire aspect of it and kind of, as you said, getting people's hearts and minds on board in a way. And then that kind of leads us to this third pillar, right? The knowledge part.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, one of my favorite quotes in the whole world is disrupt or be disrupted. And not that I love to disrupt people's worlds, but if we don't kind of walk into that on the front end, it's going to get us on the back end. So we might as well just kind of embrace that piece. And kind of in talking about knowledge too, maybe a more complicated knowledge desire example is I had a stakeholder that we were working with that we realized in assessing, we're like, okay, we just need knowledge. We need resources. We need training. We were so excited. But we got down into it and realized actually part of the reduction in adoption was that we had the wrong people making decisions, and we had the wrong people in the wrong roles as far as how to really help move this content, this topic, this type of service forward in our organization. And so knowledge, desire, awareness, where you're bouncing sometimes, right?
Sure.
Knowledge, obviously I love because I'm a trainer. So, I mean, this is a place I adore. And again, lots of methodology and nerdiness that I could talk about here. But knowledge is really about how. How do I do my job? And again, so I'm an instructional designer by trade. I'm a senior instructional designer. That's my primary job title. And then I just love change management. And so telling people things isn't knowledge, right? Helping people know what to do their job well and letting them practice behavior, that's knowledge. That is how we really see behavior shifts. I think people look at knowledge and they think about what. And really, we should have already talked some about the what in awareness, right? Knowledge is how. Really help people understand, how do you want them to change? What's the behavior? What are the exact steps? What's the thing? Like, what is this going to look like? My favorite questions are, what's the problem we're trying to solve? What does success look like? How are we going to measure it? And if we can answer those questions, we can really help people with the knowledge and the training side of things.
So I know you said there's a lot of methodology that you can kind of dive down, you can spend a ton of time on. Can I ask you for just a pearl or a nugget or two?
Yeah, it depends on how deep you and your organization or your sphere are in training. From the simplest things, I would say you need to do an analysis before you just start making content that you think is great. So you need to understand your learner. People think I just need to understand the topic. No, no, no. You need to understand your learner. Remember, this is change. This is about people, right? It's people change. So what's going on with your learner? What's going on with your organization? And so that helps you really understand what uniquenesses do I need to consider when I'm helping them then with this topic. And also, do you need to teach them the whole topic, or is there just 20% of it that's changing, right? So do an analysis first. If I could just say anything to people who maybe aren't trainers out there, is like, believe in the methodology of do an analysis first, right? 80% planning, 20% execution. It will pay off, I promise, in your
Yeah.
ROI. If you're more nerdy in the training space, I love bringing an agile scope to, we have a framework called ADDIE or SAM. If you're in our world, we've done a lot of work, and I've spent years, I'm a tech junkie. So I love agile, Scrum, and I was kind of in that world for a while and then came to training. And so learning how to take those concepts and go, how can I be iterative? How can I give training out in phases so I can deliver faster? But it also then gives me the flexibility to not have to do everything perfect on round one. It's like, let me give you this bite, then I can work into this bite. And so I think that in the training space, don't be a box checker. Do not just give content for content. It is such a waste of time. Um, People think it saves time, but we just got to get this out because we had an audit finding. No, no. Uh, it's not worth it. It is not worth it. You will spend more time than you save.
Yeah, I have an expression that I try to, because obviously part of what I do is, educate folks on benefits and health insurance and some of those things in my day job. And I operate under the maxim that, the best way to teach a man nothing is to show a man everything, right? you give so much information, that person walks away,
Yes.
they're like, dude, I didn't catch
We
any of
call
that.
that cog load.
Yeah.
Cognitive load is what we call that in our world, right? Once you load them, just forget it. Their brain's not able to hear anymore.
So the iteration you're talking about is seeing if there's a way to take the overall change and then kind of chunk it into bits that make some sense and that sort of move us along the way, instead of, again, trying to flood too much and being maybe thoughtful about what the right amount of info and movement is.
Yeah, and it kind of plays in two lanes. We hear the phrase microlearning a lot or whatever, and so like may work, may not work for your situation. But yeah, finding ways to chunk it, and also from a work standpoint, finding ways to deliver it in chunks from my workload and prioritization standpoint, because usually I spend less time making something massive if I do it in iterative chunks
Yeah.
than if I tried to do the whole thing. You'd think in your head that waterfall method, just do it all at once, deliver it all at once, and that's the most efficient way. Well, we've just found that's actually super not true.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, those bite-sized chunks don't just pay off for the learner, they pay off for the people behind the scenes that are trying to get everything ready for that learner too.
And maybe even to tie a couple of thoughts together, because a lot of our conversation has been moving through A, D, K, and now we're on a spot of discussion surrounding iteration and circling back. And I think that, you might be a proponent for, even within the one section we're trying to get to and through, if we don't think it worked right, we got to circle back mentally and think, did we do enough on
Correct.
the awareness, on the knowledge? Yeah.
Well, and that's why one of my favorite questions is how are we going to measure it? I work really hard to not start a training project until I know how we're going to measure success.
Yeah.
Because if we get to the end and I have no way to metricize, are we being successful? Then I have no way to know, were we successful, right? And so if we set that up front and then we watch it, then that helps us dig in and go, oh, this part's going great, but we need to go drill in here. Or this is going well, or we're killing it, or oh, we're not at all. And then we can go back through those letters or those iterations and figure out efficiently how to go help our organization. And I think at the conference, that was one of the things. I think the title of my session was like how to get results like efficiently, like quickly. And so a great part of change management is how to drill in to the right problem so you know what to go try to solve.
Yeah. So I'm so grateful for this conversation. I feel like we've touched upon stuff that each one of them has so much back and behind it. So maybe to bring us home, if you can kind of think mentally about the things we've talked about today and any last notes or any ribbons to kind of tie around it, what would be some of your parting thoughts?
Yeah, I think find a way to get change management in your pocket, whether it's someone in your organization or whether you learn a little bit about it, would be a huge nugget. Like you will get better outcomes with change management. There's great data out there to prove it too. I think the second thing I would say is when you're thinking about that, the right person kind of matters in this. And it goes to a lot of the whys that I was talking about of like, you can't be assumptive, you can't have control issues, you can't, and we all, there are people that have some, that's okay. We're all different. It's okay if some of us are a little more structured and some of us are a little more like, oh, tell me more, right?
Yeah.
You need a, tell me more to help you with change management. So get the right people in the right places and learn yourself, build your own awareness and desire and knowledge towards wanting to implement change management. And from that point, you'll see how it best fits into organization. But there are so many great resources. ProSci out on LinkedIn, there's a million communities that connect you to change management practitioners. There is no field that you could not absorb change management into what you do in your work life and your personal life. So I'm a huge proponent that everybody should learn about it and everybody should start applying it at some increment in their everyday work life.
Yeah, I think that if you talk to anyone who's got their bookshelf of stuff they work through, especially because Who Moved My Cheese is such a tiny, easy book to get through, but it's a
Yes.
really, powerful little parable.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I have mine too, right? I have Brain Rules and Hamster Revolution. I got my, my couple that sit on my shelf. But I think also I would just say that change management has a lot of great infographics. Can I just say, like, if you're not a book person, if you're not a podcast person, although this is a podcast, if
Yeah.
you're not an audiobook person, if you're not going to read 1,000 articles, you can literally look at infographics and be like, oh, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
And then just start having conversations. Like, this is a normal part of the human existence. Like, we've all done this our entire lives. This has been going on for thousands of years. We just have better ways to articulate it. So look at pictures, just look at pictures, and then find ways to go, oh, I think maybe my person needs a little more awareness. Or I think that I've thrown knowledge at them. Why isn't this working? I might have some other things I need to work through.
So to be an expert in where there's an expression that the only thing constant is change is it's a pretty cool thing to be an expert in.
It is. And I think my favorite part about change management is I love watching cultures change. I love watching social dynamics. And so culture change is something that's going to happen forever. Like, we like to kind of do this thing where, like, everything's on fire and it's the worst time in history. And really, it's not. Like, there have been so many incredible changes over the course of history. And so if we can just slow down and go, change is normal. Everything we're experiencing, everything that's gaslighting us and making us feel emotions, this is normal. It's okay. It's going to be okay. Then we can work through those pieces of figuring out how we want to adopt that change so much more healthfully. And I would love to see people in that space, more peace, more grace. We get better outcomes when we
Yeah.
can do that together.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I couldn't have enjoyed this conversation more. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. And it was super fun to meet you this year. It was a great time. I felt like we had a really good time visiting for a couple of days. And so it was fun to reconnect this way.
I totally agree. Thank you so much. We appreciate you so much. And thank you guys so much for joining us. That's all the time we have for you this week on the podcast. Thank you to our sponsor, True Hue. Join us next week. Join us every week. And until next week, make this the best week yet.